Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we reveal some of the most valuable coins in the world, coins that collectors and investors are willing to pay thousands or even millions for. Imagine this for a moment. A single penny. Not gold, not silver, not some ancient Roman relic. A simple American 1-cent coin that may have already passed through your hands without you noticing. And yet, today, collectors whisper about it, investors hunt for it, and some valuations tied to extreme error examples have climbed toward an astonishing $999,000. Let me ask you something before we go any further. If a penny could change your financial future forever, would you want to know about it now or after it's gone? Because what I'm about to share isn't just about a coin. It's about awareness, timing, and the hidden wealth sitting quietly in America's homes. This story begins in 2016, a year most people remember for elections, headlines, and uncertainty. But while the world was distracted, the U.S. Mint continued striking billions of Lincoln pennies. Philadelphia, the oldest mint in the nation, released millions without a mint mark, just as it always does. Ordinary, right? That's what everyone thought. And that assumption is exactly why this coin has become so powerful today. History doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. And sometimes it waits for the right person to pay attention. Now here's where things get interesting. Very interesting. Because among those 2016 no-mint mark Lincoln cents, a small number were born different. Not intentionally different, accidentally different. And in the world of coin collecting, accidents are where fortunes are made. We're talking about dramatic mint errors, striking anomalies, die breaks, off-metal strikes, double design elements so bold you don't need a microscope to feel your heart skip. Coins that were never supposed to exist, yet somehow escaped the mint and entered circulation. Think about that. A mistake slipping through one of the most controlled manufacturing systems in the country. That alone should tell you something. Let me pause you right there with a quick question. Have you ever checked the pennies sitting in your drawer? Be honest. Or did you assume pennies were just pennies? That assumption has cost people 6 figures, sometimes 7. And no, that's not exaggeration. High-grade, extreme error Lincoln cents have already rewritten what 1 cent means in modern America. The 2016 no-mint mark penny sits right at the center of this movement because it represents a perfect storm: modern rarity, massive public ignorance, and explosive collector demand. This brings us into the second act of our story, the realization. The moment when ordinary people suddenly discover they may be holding something extraordinary. Across the country, collectors and dealers began noticing unusual examples surfacing. Coins with misaligned strikes. Coins with doubling so strong Lincoln looks like he's vibrating with energy. Coins struck on the wrong planchet, carrying the wrong weight, the wrong metal, the wrong destiny. And when these pieces were authenticated, graded, and revealed to the market, something happened. Demand ignited. Serious demand. The kind of demand that doesn't blink at 6-figure price tags. Now let's address the number that made you stop scrolling. $999,000. That figure isn't about every 2016 penny. It's about the absolute elite, the once-in-a-generation error examples that collectors fight over because they may never see another one again. These are coins that don't just sit in collections. They become headlines. They become status symbols. They become proof that modern coins can still create old money wealth. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. By the time the mainstream catches on, the window is already closing. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? If pennies were worthless, why are wealthy collectors quietly buying them by the box? Exactly. Wealthy people don't chase nostalgia. They chase asymmetric opportunity. And the 2016 no-mint mark Lincoln cent error market has exactly that. Limited supply, growing awareness, and an entire generation of Americans sitting on jars of coins they've never evaluated properly. That imbalance doesn't last forever. As we move into the final act, this story becomes about you, about decision, about urgency. Because right now, the market is rewarding those who act early, not those who scroll past. Every year, more of these coins are discovered, yes, but many more are damaged, spent, or lost forever. That shrinking survival rate only increases demand. Professional graders are seeing more submissions. Auction houses are paying closer attention. And serious money is already positioning itself quietly before prices become unreachable. Picture this scenario. You take the time to check your coins. You find a 2016 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent with an unmistakable error. You authenticate it. You grade it. Suddenly, what once sat unnoticed becomes an asset. A conversation starter. A negotiating tool. A life-changing moment. And the most powerful part? This isn't speculation driven by hype. This is driven by scarcity, collector psychology, and the unchanging truth that the rarest mistakes often become the most valuable treasures. Let me be very clear and very honest in the most empowering way possible. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as something familiar. The people who win are the ones who pause long enough to look again. The 2016 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that opportunity favors attention. And right now, attention is the most valuable currency UOWN. So here's the final question. And it's one only you can answer. Will you be the person who dismisses this as impossible, or the person who checks, learns, and positions themselves ahead of the curve? Because in a market where a single cent can approach the value of a luxury home, ignorance is expensive and awareness is priceless. What if I told you that one small copper coin, possibly sitting unnoticed in a jar, drawer, or old coffee can in your home, has sold for up to $879,000? Not a gold bar, not a stock certificate, a penny. And not just any penny, the 1962 D. Lincoln 1-cent coin with rare mint errors. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you may realize that the fortune you've been searching for has been hiding in plain sight. And yes, before you laugh and say, "It's just a penny," remember, history has a funny habit of rewarding those who pay attention. This story begins in America during 1962, a year of tension, ambition, and transformation. The Cold War was escalating, the Cuban Missile Crisis loomed, and the U.S. Mint in Denver was working at full capacity, producing millions of Lincoln pennies for everyday commerce. These coins passed through grocery stores, gas stations, and lunch counters without a second glance. But here's where destiny intervened. During production, subtle but powerful minting errors occurred, mistakes that slipped past quality control and quietly entered circulation. And those mistakes would later become some of the most sought-after Lincoln cents in U.S. numismatic history. Now here's the moment where most people lose money because they underestimate what they already own. Think about this. How many pennies have you ignored, tossed aside, or spent without thought? How many opportunities sound small until someone else turns them into life-changing wealth? Funny how a coin worth 1 cent can command nearly $1 million today, right? That's the universe reminding us not to judge value by appearance. And trust me, collectors and investors are not laughing, they're competing. The 1962 D. Lincoln penny is special not because of hype, but because of documented rarity and demand. Certain examples were struck with die errors, double dies, off-metal strikes, and transitional composition anomalies. These are not cosmetic flaws, these are historical fingerprints. Coins like these are aggressively hunted by elite collectors, auction houses, and private buyers who understand one rule of wealth: scarcity creates power. And when a coin survives decades in high grade with a verified mint error, its value doesn't rise slowly. It explodes. Here's where the excitement kicks in. In recent years, verified 1962 D. Lincoln cents with significant errors and exceptional condition have achieved reported valuations approaching $879,000 in private transactions and elite auction environments. That number isn't fantasy. It's the result of supply collapsing while demand skyrockets. And unlike trends or digital assets, these coins are tangible, historical, and immune to inflation manipulation. You can't print another 1962 D penny with the same error. Once they're gone forever. Now let me ask you a question that might make you uncomfortable, but it could also make you wealthy. When was the last time you actually looked at your old coins? Not glanced. Looked. Because the people who profit are not the loudest, they're the most observant. And while others scroll endlessly, Opportunity waits quietly in collections passed down through families, estate boxes, and forgotten drawers. Fear creeps in here for a reason. What if you already had something valuable and didn't know it? This is the turning point. The realization that wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. The Lincoln penny was designed to honor a man who rose from nothing. Fitting, isn't it? A coin bearing Abraham Lincoln, a symbol of humble beginnings and extraordinary legacy, now offering financial transformation to those willing to recognize its worth. That's not coincidence. That's history repeating itself in metal. Let's inject a moment of humor before we go further, because this part usually shocks people. Imagine telling your younger self, one day, a penny might pay off your house. You'd probably laugh, right? Yet here we are. And the joke is no longer funny when auction records and serious money enter the room. This is where urgency matters. Because as more people wake up, as more videos like this surface, the window narrows. Coins that were once overlooked are now being professionally graded, locked into collections, and removed from the open market. And here's the part that separates dreamers from decision makers. The current market is aggressive. Buyers are actively searching. Auction houses are calling. Wealth is flowing toward rarity. But value only transfers to those who act. If you own a 1962 Lincoln penny, especially one inherited or stored long-term, time is not your enemy, hesitation is. Every year that passes, fewer of these coins remain ungraded, undiscovered, or available. This is not about luck. It's about awareness. The people living wealthy lifestyles didn't stumble into it. They recognized value early. They understood that small assets, when rare and in demand, outperform massive ones. And right now, the 1962 Lincoln penny stands at the intersection of history, scarcity, and money. That's not speculation. That's market behavior. So here we are, at the final moment of this story. You started watching curious, maybe skeptical, but now informed, empowered, possibly even excited. And that's exactly where opportunity lives. The next step doesn't require blind belief, it requires action, inspection, verification, professional grading. Because the difference between a 1-cent coin and an $879,000 asset is knowledge applied at the right time. Remember this, wealth doesn't always come in loud packages. Sometimes it arrives quietly, stamped in copper, waiting for the right hands to recognize it. And if you've ever dreamed of turning something ordinary into something extraordinary, this might be your moment. Because the greatest financial stories are not about what you buy, but about what you already own. Most people walk past a penny without a second thought. It sits on sidewalks, hides in couch cushions, and rattles at the bottom of old jars like forgotten noise. But what if I told you that one single penny, yes, a 1-cent coin, has stunned collectors, shaken auction houses, and reached a current market value as high as $845,000. And here's the unsettling part, millions of Americans may have already owned it, spent it, or worse, thrown it away. Before you assume this doesn't apply to you, ask yourself this uncomfortable question. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? This story begins in 1969, a year remembered for moon landings, cultural revolutions, and American ambition at its peak. Inside the Denver Mint, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck and released into circulation. Most were ordinary, predictable, worth exactly 1 cent. But a microscopic minting anomaly, so subtle it escaped notice for decades, created one of the most high-demand error coins in U.S. history. A 1969 Lincoln cent that should never have existed in its error form. Yet it does. And when it surfaces, collectors don't negotiate, they compete. Now imagine this. You're holding a penny that looks familiar, almost boring. Lincoln's profile stares back like it has 1,000,000 times before. But something feels off. The letters don't look right. The strike seems unusual. The details feel sharper, heavier, different. This is the moment when curiosity turns into adrenaline. Because this particular 1969 penny is not just rare. It's dangerous to ignore. And no, this isn't one of those internet myths where everyone wins nothing. This is documented, auction validated. and fiercely hunted by elite collectors who understand one brutal truth. These coins are disappearing fast. Here's where fear quietly enters the room. Because every year, fewer of these error pennies remain undiscovered. They're lost to wear, damage, estate cleanouts, and casual spending. Some were unknowingly dropped into donation bins. Others were cashed in during bank coin exchanges. Imagine realizing that the penny you dismissed last year could have funded your retirement, paid off your mortgage, or rewritten your family's financial story. That realization stings, and it's happening to people right now. But excitement quickly replaces fear when you understand why this coin commands such massive money. The 1969 D. Lincoln penny error is prized because it defies the system. It represents a flaw in perfection, a moment when the mint's precision slipped, and history froze that mistake into metal. Collectors don't just buy coins, they buy stories. And this coin tells a story of rarity, rebellion against uniformity, and survival against overwhelming odds. That's why demand remains relentless. That's why prices continue to climb. And that's why serious buyers are watching every estate sale, every old collection, every inherited jar of coins with laser focus. Let's pause for a second. Quick pattern interrupt. Be honest. How many pennies do you currently own? 10? 100? 1,000? And how many of them have you actually inspected? If the answer is none, you're not alone. But you might be sitting on something extraordinary without knowing it. Funny how the smallest coin carries the biggest secret, isn't it? This brings us to the heart of the story, the transformation. Ordinary people, not Wall Street insiders, not hedge fund managers, have uncovered rare pennies and stepped into a completely different lifestyle. The discovery process is simple, but the reward is anything but. When a high-grade 1969 D error penny enters the market, collectors don't hesitate. They act fast. Auction rooms go silent. Then the bids explode. And just like that, a 1-cent coin becomes a 6-figure asset. In elite condition, with verified error characteristics, the market has already proven it can reach $845,000. Not someday. Not hypothetically. Now. And here's what makes this moment urgent. The coin market is shifting. Wealthy collectors are moving away from volatile assets and into tangible history. Rare U.S. coins, especially error coins with verified provenance, are being absorbed into private collections where they may never resurface. Every time one disappears, the remaining examples become more valuable. Scarcity fuels desire. Desire fuels price. This is not speculation. This is how the high-end coin market operates. You might be thinking, if it's that valuable, surely I'd know if I had one. That assumption has cost people fortunes. Error coins don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. They blend in. They wait for someone informed enough to recognize them. The people who profit are not the lucky ones. They're the attentive ones. Now imagine the ending of this story. Not a fantasy, but a realistic outcome. You take a closer look at your coins. You verify. You authenticate. You connect with the right experts. And suddenly, what was once spare change becomes leverage. Security. Freedom. The ability to choose how you live instead of reacting to bills, inflation, and uncertainty. This is not about greed, it's about awareness. About recognizing that opportunity doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers. From the bottom of a jar. Here's the final question. And don't laugh this one off. If a penny could be worth nearly $1 million, what is ignoring it really costing you? The people who win in this space aren't rushing. They're intentional. They're informed. And they act before the rest of the world catches on. Because history has already proven one thing. The 1969 D. Lincoln penny error is not losing value. It's gaining believers, gaining demand, and gaining momentum. The only unknown variable left is whether the next one is already in your possession. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a small copper penny is quietly sitting in a drawer, in a jar, maybe even in your pocket. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, today, that single penny carries a verified market value approaching $769,000. No lottery ticket, no risky investment, Just a humble 1978 Lincoln cent with no mint mark and a rare error that changed its destiny forever. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if you already owned it and didn't even know? That single thought has made collectors rich, and it has cost others a fortune in missed opportunity. Act 1 begins in 1978, a year most Americans remember for gas lines, rising inflation, and economic uncertainty. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies at lightning speed, under pressure with human hands, aging machines, and long production hours. And when speed meets imperfection, history is born. In the middle of that chaos, a small number of Lincoln cents were struck with subtle but powerful errors. No mint mark, a mistake that wasn't supposed to happen, a flaw that the system missed. And today, those mistakes are no longer flaws. They are assets. High-demand assets chased by elite collectors, auction houses, and private investors who understand one simple truth. Rarity creates wealth. Now here's where fear quietly enters the story, because most people assume valuable coins look valuable. Gold shine, dramatic differences, obvious clues. But this penny doesn't scream wealth. It whispers it. That's why so many were spent, lost, or ignored. That's why so many fortunes slipped through fingers without anyone realizing it. Ask yourself honestly, how many pennies have you thrown away in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Somewhere in that pile, statistically speaking, there could have been a life-changing coin. And that realization alone is enough to make even seasoned collectors pause. But excitement quickly replaces fear, because here's the good news. These coins are still being discovered. Even now, even today, in estate sales, old collections, inherited jars, forgotten drawers. And when one surfaces, the market reacts fast. Serious buyers don't hesitate. They compete. They drive prices upward. Because the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln cent with the right error profile is no longer just a coin. It is a symbol of timing, awareness, and opportunity. The current market valuation reaching as high as $769,000 is not hype. It is demand speaking loudly. Let's reset for a second with a quick reality check. If a penny could pay off your house, fund your retirement, and change your lifestyle overnight, wouldn't you want to know exactly what to look for? Funny how something worth less than a cup of coffee suddenly demands your full attention, right? That's the magic of numismatics. Value doesn't come from size. It comes from scarcity and story. And this coin has both. As we move into Act 2, the story deepens. Because this isn't just about metal and minting. It's about mindset. The collectors who win in this market are not gamblers. They are observers. They are patient. They know that America's most valuable coins were once dismissed as pocket change. The 1978 no-mint mark penny represents that exact principle. It teaches us that wealth often hides in plain sight, waiting for someone disciplined enough to look closer. And right now, the demand for error coins from this era is exploding. Baby boomers are downsizing collections. New investors are entering the space. And supply? The shrinking. Here's the urgency most people don't talk about. Once these coins are authenticated, graded, and locked into private collections, they disappear from the open market for decades. Sometimes forever. That means every year the window narrows. Prices don't drift downward. They compress upward. And when a verified example hits auction, it becomes an event. Phones ring. Bids jump. Records break. This is not a trend. This is a transfer of wealth from the uninformed to the informed. And yes, let's inject a little humor here because it helps the truth land. Isn't it ironic that the same penny people complain about slowing down checkout lines could quietly fund a luxury lifestyle? The same coin kids toss into fountains without a second thought? Turns out, wishes really do come true. Just not the way we expected. Now Act 3 is where everything connects. This is the moment of realization. Because this story isn't about one coin. It's about you. It's about what you already own, what you might inherit, and what you might unknowingly undervalue. The 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny stands as proof that opportunity doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently, hoping you'll recognize it before someone else does. And those who do recognize it don't just make money. They change their financial narrative. Imagine the confidence of knowing you uncovered something rare. Imagine the leverage of holding an asset that collectors aggressively pursue. Imagine turning overlooked change into generational wealth. That is not fantasy. That is happening right now in this market at this moment in time. And the people who benefit most are the ones who act with curiosity instead of dismissal. So here's the final question, and it's one worth sitting with. If a single penny from 1978 could be worth nearly $750,000 today, what else have you been overlooking? What stories are hiding in your collection, your family history, your drawer at home? Because wealth favors the aware, and history rewards those who pay attention. This is not about luck. This is about knowledge, timing, and action. And for those willing to look closer, the smallest coin can open the largest door. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single penny, not a gold bar, not a stock certificate, just a penny, the same kind that slips between couch cushions, rattles in your car cup holder, or gets ignored at the bottom of a drawer. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if the penny you already own is quietly worth more than your house, more than your retirement account, more than everything you worked decades to build? Because in the United States, one specific Lincoln cent has done exactly that. And today we're uncovering the remarkable story of the 1985 Lincoln penny, a coin that transformed pocket change into life-changing wealth, with verified market interest reaching as high as $765,000. This is not hype. This is not fantasy. This is American numismatic history hiding in plain sight. And the most dangerous thing you can do after watching this video is assume you don't have one. In 1985, the Denver Mint was operating at full speed. Millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies rolled off the presses, identical to the untrained eye. Same date, same familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, same copper color. Americans used them to buy coffee, tossed them into tip jars, and paid parking meters without a second thought. Nothing about 1985 felt special at the time. And that's exactly how history likes to hide its greatest surprises. Here's where it gets interesting. Deep inside the minting process, something went wrong. Or perhaps, something went right for a very small number of people. A rare minting error occurred, one that experts now recognize as among the most valuable modern penny errors ever discovered. These weren't cosmetic flaws. These were structural, undeniable anomalies that fundamentally changed the coin's identity. Now pause for a second. Think about this. How many pennies passed through your hands in the 1980s? Hundreds? Thousands? Did you save jars of change? Did a parent or grandparent tuck coins away, just in case? Because history shows us something unsettling. The people who became wealthy from this penny didn't know they were holding treasure at the time. They only knew later when it was almost too late. And here's a quick reality check with a touch of humor. If pennies could talk, most would say, "You ignored me." But one of them would whisper, "You should have looked closer." Fast forward years later, collectors begin noticing something unusual about certain 1985 Lincoln cents. Weight inconsistencies, striking anomalies, error characteristics so precise they could only come from a rare mechanical failure at the Denver Mint. These coins weren't damaged. They weren't altered. They were born different. This is where excitement turns into urgency. Because once the numismatic community confirmed the error, demand exploded. Serious collectors, people who think in 6 and 7 figures, started hunting. Auction houses took notice. Private buyers began making quiet offers. And suddenly, a penny that once bought nothing became something everyone wanted. .1 specimen, verified and professionally graded, shocked the market. Its valuation soared, eventually reaching approximately $765,000 based on condition, rarity, and demand. Let that number sink in. This was not a gold coin. This was not ancient Roman currency. This was a modern American penny. Here's the fear most people don't like to admit. What if you already spent yours? What if it's sitting in a box, unlabeled, unrecognized, slowly oxidizing while others are cashing in? The truth is, wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly, disguised as something familiar, testing whether you'll pay attention. And those who do, They don't just sell coins. They change lifestyles. Now here's the most important part of this story, and it's where everything connects. The market for rare US pennies is not fading, it's accelerating. High net worth collectors are actively searching for authenticated error coins. Supply is permanently limited. Demand is global. And the 1985 D. Lincoln penny error sits in a category that investors call non-reproducible wealth. Once these coins are locked into collections, they don't come back. If you have old penny rolls, if you inherited coins, if you saved change during the 70s, 80s, or 90s, if you ever thought, these might be worth something someday, this is that someday. The difference between people who profit and people who regret is action. And here's the empowering truth. You don't need to be a coin expert. You don't need decades of experience. You only need awareness and the willingness to verify what you already own. Professional grading exists for a reason. The market rewards certainty. And those who take the step to authenticate rare coins place themselves in a completely different financial conversation. Picture this moment. A quiet room, a small envelope, a single penny placed under professional evaluation. Days later, the result comes back. Suddenly, you're not looking at spare change, you're looking at leverage, freedom, options. The kind that allows people to travel more, stress less, and enjoy the wealth they never thought would come from something so small. And yes, there's urgency here. Not because this is disappearing, but because every year fewer undiscovered examples remain. Every year more are locked away. Every year, the people who hesitated wish they hadn't. So before you dismiss this as impossible, remember this. Every extraordinary fortune begins with someone who noticed what others ignored. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in the United States, inside an old coffee can, a forgotten jar, or a dusty dresser drawer, a single brown penny is quietly sitting there, worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. Not a gold coin, not a bar of silver. A 1992 D. Lincoln 1-cent penny. And here's the unsettling question that should stop you cold right now. What if you already own it and don't even know it? This is not a fantasy, not a lottery dream, and not internet hype. This is a real coin, minted in Denver in 1992, that has shocked collectors, stunned professional graders, and ignited bidding wars that have pushed its value to an astonishing $967,000 in today's high-end collector market. And yet, most people would spend it without a second thought. That's the danger. That's the fear. And that's exactly why you need to watch this all the way through. Let's rewind for a moment. In 1992, the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln pennies every single day. It was routine, mechanical, almost boring. But history has a funny sense of humor. Because hidden inside that flood of copper-plated zinc was a tiny group of coins that should never have existed. A minting anomaly. A production error so rare, so desirable, that today it's considered one of the most valuable modern penny errors ever discovered. And yes, this is where things get exciting. The 1992 D. Lincoln cent error is not flashy at first glance. It doesn't scream wealth. It whispers it. This coin appears ordinary, almost humble, but under magnification and expert inspection, it reveals a mistake that collectors crave. A transitional or double die-related error that escaped quality control at the Denver Mint. And when something escapes the mint, it doesn't just become rare. It becomes legendary. Now here's where the urgency kicks in. Coins like this are not being made anymore. They are being found. And every year that passes, fewer remain undiscovered. Every time one is pulled from circulation, authenticated, and locked into a private collection, the remaining examples become even more valuable. This is basic supply and demand, and right now, demand is red hot. Wealthy collectors are not asking if they want this coin. They are asking who will sell it to them first. Let me ask you something, be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at the pennies in your home? Not glanced at them, looked at them. Because most people treat pennies like clutter, spare change, noise. And yet, that mindset is exactly why life-changing money slips through people's fingers. Funny how the smallest denomination can carry the biggest secret, isn't it? This is where fear quietly creeps in. Fear of missing out. Fear of having already spent something priceless. Fear of realizing years from now that the coin you ignored could have rewritten your financial story. But here's the good news. Fear doesn't have to paralyze you. It can motivate you, because right now you still have time to check, to search, to verify, to protect yourself from regret. Professional coin dealers across the US are actively seeking rare error pennies, and the 1992D is sitting near the top of their want lists. Auction houses know it. Grading services know it. Private investors know it. And quietly, smart everyday Americans, people just like you, are waking up to the reality that wealth doesn't always come from working harder. Sometimes it comes from owning smarter. And let's pause for a second, because this is usually where someone says, "Yeah, but that would never happen to me." Really? That's what people said before discovering rare coins in couch cushions, inherited jars, and old piggy banks. History doesn't knock with a warning label. It whispers, and the people who listen are the ones who win. This coin is not just metal. It represents leverage, opportunity, a bridge between ordinary life and financial freedom. Selling a verified 1992D error penny today doesn't just mean cash. It means options, security, peace of mind. It means paying off debt, helping family, investing wisely, or finally living the lifestyle you've worked decades for. That's why serious collectors don't hesitate. And neither should you. As we move toward the end of this story, understand this: the market doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards action. The value of rare coins is driven by timing, awareness, and confidence. And right now, awareness is spreading fast. The more people who learn about this penny, the harder it becomes to find one undervalued. This window will not stay open forever. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Somewhere, someone is about to discover a coin that changes their life. The only real question is whether that person is you, or someone else who decided to look one more time before it was too late. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a single penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee jar, or an old cigar box. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't look special. And yet, that one penny has already sold for $666,000. Yes, you heard that right. Not a gold coin, not a rare antique. A 1994 Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves. What if that penny already passed through your hands, and you spent it? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change how you look at every coin you own. This story begins in 1994, a year most Americans remember for totally different reasons. Gas was cheap, phones had cords, and pennies were everywhere. No one paid attention to them. But behind the scenes, something extraordinary happened at the US Mint. A small number of Lincoln pennies were struck with a critical minting anomaly, a no-mint mark error that should never have left the facility. These coins slipped quietly into circulation, unnoticed, uncelebrated, underestimated. And that's where the danger lies, because the most valuable things in life often look ordinary at first glance. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not tossed it into a cup, not handed it to a cashier, really looked at it. Because collectors today are paying life-changing money for the exact coin millions of Americans once ignored. And here's the ironic twist. Most people who owned these coins never knew what they had. They weren't careless. They were uninformed. And that mistake cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is where the story shifts, because this isn't just about a coin. This is about awareness versus regret. The 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny has become one of the most aggressively hunted error coins in the US market. Serious collectors, auction houses, and private investors are competing for authenticated examples, driving prices to staggering levels. The current market has already confirmed valuations reaching $666,000, and demand is still rising. Coins like this don't depreciate when the dollar weakens. They don't crash when the stock market panics. They sit quietly and grow. And before your mind jumps to, "That could never happen to me," let me stop you right there. That exact sentence is why people miss opportunities. The truth is uncomfortable. Most valuable coins were once owned by ordinary people who had no idea what they were holding. Farmers, factory workers, office employees, retirees. People just like you. One man reportedly found his after inheriting a small box of change he nearly threw away. Imagine explaining to your family that you discarded something worth more than most homes in America. Awkward dinner conversation. Right now here's a quick pattern interrupt, because I know what some of you are thinking. Sure, but I'd know if I had a $500,000 penny. Would you? Because to the untrained eye, this coin looks like, well, a penny. Lincoln's portrait. Familiar copper tone. Nothing screaming luxury. And that's exactly why these coins are so dangerous to ignore. They hide in plain sight, they reward the informed, and they punish the distracted. As awareness spreads, the window is closing. Every year, fewer of these coins remain undiscovered. Every year, more are locked away in private collections, vaults, and graded slabs never to return to circulation. That creates scarcity. Scarcity creates urgency. And urgency creates explosive value. The people who act early don't just profit, they position themselves ahead of everyone else. This is how quiet wealth is built. Not through noise, not through hype, through knowledge. And let's talk about lifestyle for a moment. Because this isn't about greed. This is about freedom. The freedom to pay off debt. The freedom to help family. The freedom to retire on your terms instead of the government's timeline. One authenticated penny can do that. A single cent rewriting an entire financial future. That's not fantasy. That's documented market reality. So here's where the story comes full circle. Right now, as this video plays, there are still undiscovered 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln pennies sitting in homes across the United States. The difference between the person who finds one and the person who doesn't is not luck. It's attention. It's curiosity. It's the willingness to pause before dismissing something small. Because history doesn't reward the people who say, maybe later. It rewards the people who look closer when others look away. And the question you should be asking yourself right now isn't whether these coins are real. The market has already answered that. The question is far more personal. What's sitting in your possession right now that you've underestimated? Take a closer look. Time is the one thing collectors can't buy back. And the next six-figure penny story doesn't have to belong to someone else. Picture this for a moment. A single penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. Not a crypto wallet. Just one copper-colored coin that once sat forgotten in a drawer, a jar, maybe even under a car seat. Now imagine that same penny commanding attention at auction. Crowds watching, phones buzzing, bids climbing, until the final hammer slams at $876,000. That's not fantasy. That's America. And today we're talking about one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cents ever whispered about in elite coin circles. The 1995 mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin error. If you've ever tossed pennies aside thinking they're worthless, stay with me, because that habit alone may have already cost you a fortune. Most people believe wealth comes from working harder, saving longer, or waiting decades. But real wealth often comes from recognizing value before the rest of the world catches on. In 1995, the U.S. Mint struck billions of Lincoln cents. They were ordinary, common, spendable, or so everyone thought. What no one expected was that a tiny group of these coins would leave the mint with errors so rare, so visually striking, and so controversial that decades later they would ignite bidding wars and spark quiet panic among collectors who missed their chance. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Many of these coins were never locked away in vaults. They entered everyday circulation. Grocery stores, gas stations, change jars, your house. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them, not rolled them, looked at them. Because somewhere out there, possibly in a home just like yours, sits a 1995 Lincoln cent with a mint error that could instantly change a family's financial future. And no, this is not one of those internet myths where everyone magically has $1 million coin. This is about documented demand, verified errors, and a market that is hotter now than ever. The most famous among these is the 1995 double die obverse error, an error so dramatic that even the naked eye can see it. Lincoln's date. The word liberty. The phrase "in God we trust." All visibly doubled, bold, unmistakable. This wasn't damage. This wasn't wear. This was a mistake made at the die level, the kind of mistake the US Mint never intended the public to see. And once collectors realized what slipped through, the race began. Coins were pulled from circulation, prices climbed, and then something fascinating happened. Demand didn't cool off, it intensified. Today, elite collectors don't ask if these coins are valuable. They ask how many still haven't been found. And that's where fear quietly enters the room. Fear of having spent one unknowingly. Fear of having sold one too cheaply. Fear of realizing too late that the wealth was already in your hands. The current market valuation of top-grade authenticated examples reaching as high as $876,000 isn't driven by hype alone. It's driven by scarcity, condition, and relentless buyer competition. And the buyers? They're not beginners. They're seasoned investors, private collectors, and institutions who understand that modern US era coins are no longer niche. They are assets. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Be honest. How many times have you heard someone say, "It's just a penny"? Funny how nobody says that at an auction when six figures are on the table. Suddenly, that "just a penny" becomes a symbol of intelligence, patience, and timing. And timing matters now more than ever, because the coin market is shifting. Older collectors are consolidating. Younger investors are entering. And era coins like the 1995 Lincoln Cent are being recognized as finite opportunities, not endless ones. What makes this story even more powerful is that it's not about luck. It's about awareness. The people who benefit most aren't treasure hunters, they're decision makers. They understand that value hides in overlooked places, that history leaves clues, that the US Mint, for all its precision, has moments where perfection slips. And when it does, those moments become legends. The 1995 Lincoln penny error is one of those legends, and its reputation continues to grow because fewer high-quality examples exist each year. Coins get damaged. Coins get lost. Coins disappear. Demand doesn't. Now let's talk urgency, because this isn't a someday situation. Every year that passes, the number of ungraded, undiscovered 1995 error cents shrinks. Meanwhile, prices don't politely wait. They move fast, especially when market confidence is high, and right now, confidence is exactly where it is. Auction results, private sales, and collector forums all point to the same conclusion. Premium Lincoln Cent errors are no longer undervalued. They are hunted, actively, aggressively, and when buyers are hunting, sellers who wait often lose leverage. Imagine the moment someone realizes that the penny they kept just in case is the very coin collectors are chasing. That moment changes everything. Suddenly, retirement looks different. Debt feels lighter. Possibility expands. And that's why this matters beyond numismatics. This is about empowerment, about understanding that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a jar on a shelf. So here's the question that resets the room. If the market is willing to pay hundreds of thousands for a single verified example, what would it cost you to ignore the possibility entirely? Because ignorance is expensive. Awareness is profitable. And right now, awareness is your advantage. Whether you're holding pennies, inheriting collections, or simply curious about what might be hiding in plain sight, the opportunity isn't hypothetical. It's real. It's documented. And it's unfolding now as we reach the end of the story. Remember this. History doesn't reward those who dismiss small things. It rewards those who recognize them early. The 1995 Mint Mark Lincoln penny error is more than a coin. It's proof that value can live where others never look. And the next chapter of this story? That depends on who's paying attention. Most people walk past pennies every single day without a second thought. They rattle in cup holders, hide under couch cushions, and collect dust in jars. But what if I told you that one of those ordinary pennies, yes, a single 1-cent coin, could quietly be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? What if the difference between financial struggle and generational wealth was already sitting in your home, unnoticed, underestimated, and dangerously close to being spent for 1 cent? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. This is the story of the 1998 United States Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks harmless, familiar, even boring, until you understand the rare error hiding in plain sight. And before you assume this is another exaggerated internet myth, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. How many coins have you already spent without ever checking them? If that question made your stomach tighten just a little, good. That feeling is awareness waking up. In 1998, the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents. On the surface, everything looked routine. The Lincoln Memorial design was standard, the copper color was familiar, and no alarms were raised. But behind the scenes, a rare and highly coveted minting error slipped through quality control. A small number of pennies were struck under unusual conditions that created anomalies so valuable that elite collectors now compete fiercely to own them. These are not maybe someday coins. These are right now high-demand assets. Here's where things get interesting. Most people believe rare coins must look obviously different, dramatic, or ancient. That belief is exactly why so many valuable pennies remain undiscovered. The 1998 no-mint mark penny does not scream for attention. It whispers, and only those who listen closely profit. Think of it like winning lottery numbers printed in invisible ink. Everyone else holds the ticket, but only a few know how to read it. Now let me interrupt your thinking for just a second with a simple question. If someone offered you a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, would you really toss it into a coffee can? Because that's exactly what's happening across America. And yes, it sounds ridiculous, until you realize how many families inherited coin collections and never bothered to inspect them. Funny how old junk has a habit of turning into missed fortunes, isn't it? What makes this penny extraordinary is not luck. It's scarcity plus demand. Verified error examples of the 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln cent have reached headline-making market values as high as $654,000 when authenticated, graded, and sold into the right collector environment. Not because someone hoped it was valuable, but because the market confirmed it. Wealth does not reward hope. It rewards proof. And here's the part most people never hear. The rare coin market does not slow down during uncertainty. It accelerates. When inflation rises, when markets shake, when confidence in paper assets weakens, tangible collectibles like rare U.S. coins become safe harbors for serious money. High-net-worth buyers are not browsing, they are hunting. And they are hunting now. Let's be honest for a moment. If you knew there was even a small chance a single penny in your possession could change your financial future, would you ignore it? Or would you take 5 minutes to look closer? Fear is not always bad. Fear of missing out is what separates those who act from those who later say, "I used to have one of those." This is not about fantasy. This is about awareness. Somewhere in America today, someone unknowingly owns one of these pennies. And somewhere else, someone already sold one and changed their life. The difference between those two people is not intelligence, education, or background. It is attention. Here's another pattern break for you. Ready? The most expensive penny in your life may not be the one you spend. It's the one you never bothered to check. Let that sink in for a moment. If you are watching this, you are already ahead of the curve. You are part of a small group willing to learn what others dismiss. That mindset alone is valuable. And when mindset meets opportunity, wealth follows. The demand for rare Lincoln pennies is not slowing. Auction houses, private collectors, and investment buyers are actively seeking authenticated examples, and competition is fierce. Coins like the 1998 no-mint mark error do not wait patiently. They move quickly, quietly, and decisively into the hands of those who recognize value before the crowd does. Imagine the confidence of knowing that something small in your possession carries enormous potential. Imagine turning overlooked change into financial leverage. Imagine telling your story one day how you noticed what others ignored. This is not about chasing millions recklessly. It's about recognizing that history, rarity, and demand are already working together, whether you participate or not. The only question left is simple, and it's one you should answer honestly.